I don't know about you, but I've always loved video game soundtracks as much as, and in some cases more than, the games themselves. My playlists are stuffed full of tracks from my favourite games, whether it's high energy music from epic boss battles, soothing village themes, or the backing to an emotional story moment. Every time I listen to a track from a game, I'm transported to those moments where they were chiming away in the background during my playtime. When you think about it, it makes video games arguably the hardest medium to make music for, because you have to create tracks that encompass the widest possible variety of vibes. Every location, every boss battle, and just about every moment in between needs music of some kind. And the tone often needs to vary wildly from moment to moment, yet the soundtrack as a whole still needs to have a cohesive identity. But the world is full of people far more talented than I could ever hope to be, who perform what might as well be magic as far as I'm concerned, turning every feeling it's possible for a player to experience into a piece of music. But there's one type of track that impresses me above all others. You see, composing a track to represent a location, while not easy, has certain tropes you can lean on. You can leverage so much information to inform the music you want to create. The overall visuals of the people who live there, the tone of the game's story is looking to hit at the moment you arrive there. Even boss battles, while there are always unique spins to be had, the general template is set: high energy, epic vibe, and making the boss feel like a menacing threat. But there is one type of track where you don't have any of that to rely on, and the only way to create the perfect piece of music is to truly engage with the writing to the deepest possible level. Character themes. To distill a character into music, to capture who they are, their journey, what they hope to achieve, and turn that into a melody requires complete and total understanding of the story at hand, and this particular character's role within it. What's more, the listening experience is completely different. When I listen to a good location theme, I'm transported to that location, and all of the vibes within wash over me. But when I'm listening to a good character theme, it's almost like I'm having a conversation. I can feel that character's presence radiating around me. It might be the closest thing in this world to genuine wizardry. I couldn't even dream of creating something so meaningful. Yet, somehow there are wizards out there who can do it. And in my opinion, there is no game or composer that does it better than Yasunori Nishiki and Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler and its sequels are games that live and die on your connection with its characters, both narratively and mechanically. Rather than one narrative that slowly sees the 8 main characters join and bond in service of a single goal, each party member is instead the protagonist of their own unique story that you can complete in any order you like. This means that every character has to stand out enough to carry an entire narrative on their backs, while feeling completely different from the 7 other protagonists and their stories. This extends to their gameplay functions as well, as the job and path action system lead to a very different feel in combat and make them useful for a variety of tasks when exploring the overworld. All of this makes them perfect games to show what I mean when I talk about how magical it can be when you distill a character into a piece of music. Because in Octopath, it's a vital piece of the puzzle to making the whole concept a success. While a character's dialogue and actions in the narrative will give you a good sense of who they are, it's their theme that sets the overall tone for them and their journey they're about to set out on. It creates an immaculate vibe that, if you listen closely, tells you everything you need to know about them. When done at its best, it feels almost like you're standing in their presence, which is a more effective way than any to build a connection with the player. But okay, praising it in high terms is one thing, but let's get into some specific examples to show you what I'm talking about. And let's start with a track that, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll have already heard more than once. In a world being encroached upon by darkness in all corners, Ochette is the fun-loving ray of sunshine who never forgets how to have a laugh and always does her best to see the best in those around her. While Oswald sits brooding in the corner over his dead family, or Throne slinks about the place moodily pining for her freedom, Ochette is driven primarily by her stomach and never fails to be in awe of the world around her. As a beastling, she grew up on a remote island with her clan, where the natural order of the environment was put first, and their technology was primitive, even by the standards of Octopath's medieval fantasy setting. This element is immediately conveyed in its introduction, with the kalimba used to hit you with that isolated tribal vibe. To quote Nishiki on it, as an African instrument, the kalimba is particularly effective for establishing a natural vibe. There are also some gamelan sounds mixed in to add to the mystical element, which immediately tells you everything you need to know about Ochette's upbringing. She's one with nature. Her role as a hunter is all in service of maintaining the natural order, and she was brought up to believe in the myths and legends that will eventually set her off on her adventure. Even without the game telling you all of this, within just 3 seconds of this track beginning, you already have some image starting to form in your mind, purely from the choice of instrument, leading you to make assumptions about Ochette's background that immediately come in useful in her very first scene, where, as a child, she must select an animal to bond with as her partner, in what appears to be some form of sacred rite for her tribe. With her background established, the track then moves on to tell you a bit about who Ochette is. As I described earlier, her motivations are simple, and her personality is fun-loving, and once again, Nishiki lands on the perfect instrument to convey these ideas. A recorder. Admittedly, Nishiki gets far more out of the recorder than you'd expect, to the point where you might initially think it's a more complex wind instrument. But not only does it do a great job of letting Ochette's brightness shine through the rest of the track, it also fits into the setting, as you imagine it's the kind of instrument this beastling village would enjoy using. And then we have the final layer, which is the journey to come. Because, as happy-go-lucky as Ochette is, she's still setting out on a mission to tame 3 legendary beasts to prevent her village from falling to a corruptive darkness. The sweeping orchestral melody that kicks in here injects the weight of Ochette's task into the track, flirting with the minor key without actually using it, while hitting you with an epic sense of scale that simultaneously reminds you of the more serious side of Ochette, the side of her that is a guardian to her village and the people in it that she holds dear. Background, personality, and the journey to come. These are the 3 key aspects that make Octopath Traveler's character themes so effective in embodying those that they represent, and the variety of ways in which they can be communicated allows Nishiki to elevate every character to someone you can't help but root for, whatever their goal. What's more, it can even be used to greatly differentiate 2 characters who, on the surface, might seem quite similar. At first glance, Ochette and Tressa seem like they fill the same archetypes. Much like Ochette, Tressa is a wide-eyed optimist who likes to see the best in people, has a fun-loving side even when dealing with serious situations, and is stepping out into the world for the first time at the start of her story. However, the motivation behind the journeys are very different. Ochette is doing her sacred duty to prevent her people from falling to ruin, while Tressa's journey is more about coming of age, developing as a merchant, and finding her own place in the world. That's why, right out of the gate, Tressa's theme feels a lot more laid back. Where Ochette's theme uses a minor key and builds to a full orchestral melody to showcase a grandness of the adventure and importance of the task ahead of her, Tressa plays in a major key and never has that many instruments on top of each other at once, to create this more lazy vibe. Tressa doesn't have a specific goal in mind, she's just going to see where the winds take her, and make the best of whatever she finds there. This is what makes the harmonica such a perfect choice as the primary instrument that carries the melody. It's perhaps the ultimate traveller's instrument. It's small, inexpensive, and relatively easy to learn, at least so much as any instrument is supposedly easy to learn. It also has a wide reach as an instrument, as while it was originally developed in Europe, it would spread quickly and become a staple for both North American country music and Japanese folk music. The harmonica itself is an object that encapsulates many different cultures from all over the world, and that's exactly what a merchant like Tressa seeks to do in the land of Ostera. That same variety of culture bleeds into the background of the track too, informing Tressa's upbringing. Rippletide is a port town where she's lived her whole life with her merchant parents. So it's no surprise that a place like that will have exposed Tressa to these narrow glimpses of lots of different ways of life, and her family has no doubt dealt with their fair share of oddities and worldly goods over the years. That's why, in various parts, the track gets backed up by pianos, xylophones, bar chimes, and even castanets, all instruments that have origins and cultural associations that span the entire globe. And then, alongside the information of her background and the journey she's embarking on, the track uses all of these elements to tell you the simple truth that lies at the heart of Tressa's character, that she will use all of these things to bring joy to those around her. Because despite all of these different instruments, they sing together in a harmony that keeps a consistent, jolly tone throughout. It never dips, it never wavers. When new instruments comes in, it's all in service of that same goal. Tressa's here to have a good time and find her place in the world, and understands that every aspect of the world around her can teach her something that she will take on board to improve the lives of herself or those around her, and you feel that through the music. But what if we've had enough of these happy-go-lucky scamps? Octopath's world is filled with plenty of darkness too, darkness that can even put the kindest of souls to the test. Expressing positive, manly nature. That is what Nishiki described as his goal when it came to Partitio's theme. Partitio's goal as a character is blindingly simple, yet infinitely complex at the same time. He wants to end poverty for good. A simple mission statement that feels near impossible to complete. His family came from nothing, built themselves a wealthy empire off the back of a thriving silver mine, then, thanks to dodgy deals with a dodgier man, they were thrust back into having nothing, and that rock bottom is where Partitio's story starts. It's fair to say that toxic masculinity is a core part of the lot of the problems in Octopath's world, and particularly Partitio's story. It's all about ruthless businessmen trying to get one up on each other to turn a profit without a care for anyone they see as beneath them in the pecking order. It's especially poignant when we consider how Octopath 2 in particular frames its world, as it's a medieval fantasy setting that's right on the brink of an industrial revolution, or perhaps a steampunk one. Either way, it's a world that is about to go through a transition, and everyone in it is doing their best to not get left behind. And it doesn't take a historian to know that these periods were about men asserting their control over one another in service of the capitalist machine that just kept growing around them. Partitio's story needs him to be able to stand up to those men and beat them at their own game, while still being fundamentally different from them. He needs to appear to be a wheeling and dealing ruthless businessman while still sticking to his principles and improving the lives of everyone around him on his way up the ladder. That tone is set from moment one in his theme. A deep bass accompanies a slow but powerful guitar riff that immediately sets the scene of Partitio standing strong. It conjures the exact image you see when you meet him for the first time in game, as he stands looking over the ruins of the town his family once lifted into prosperity, wanting to be able to do the same thing again, but this time to the whole world. The guitar intro almost sets the tone as some kind of high noon showdown, but that's when the alto saxophone kicks in. On the surface, it's an unusual choice of instrument, and Nishiki himself says he likes it because it's one so rarely used in RPG soundtracks, which is what makes it the ideal fit for Partitio. He's the one looking to break the cycle of capitalism and the poverty it leads in its wake, to prove that you can be a good businessman without spitting on those who have less. The way the sax is played in this track almost feels like it's speaking in a way. It's the perfect musical representation of Partitio's sweet, deep south accent, which can have that harsh edge when needed, but never forgets to be kind and caring along the way. The two elements of the melody, the guitar and the sax, feel like they should exist in opposition of one another. That one can't truly shine through while the other is in the background, and yet Nishiki manages to harmonise them to perfection, letting the cool edge of the sax carry the majority of the melody, and that rhythmic guitar riff peaking and dipping in response to what the sax does. It shouldn't work, but much like Partitio's desire for change, he makes it work anyway. This is just 3 examples of what Nishiki has accomplished for 16 playable characters across 2 games, as well as the few character themes that feature in Octopath 0, and while I would quite happily sit here and break them all down one by one, you've seen how these 3 themes I've analysed bring that character development right to the forefront with nothing but music. How it lets you feel those innate qualities of each protagonist before a single scrap of dialogue fills in the details, laying crucial groundwork to connect you to the colourful cast that will take you on this game-long journey. And with these ideas established, you're then able to develop them in unique ways throughout the other areas of the soundtrack, injecting that same sense of character into themes that serve completely different purposes. Location themes, for example. Ochette's hometown of the Beastling Village uses that same recorder from her character theme to create a much simpler and more upbeat melody, one that feels more carefree, yet still echoes that adventure Ochette is setting out on, musically reminding you of what it is she's setting out to protect when she leaves it all behind. Partitio's hometown of Orush does much the same thing, but through contrast rather than harmony. Where Partitio's theme is slow and serious, using electric guitar and saxophone, Orush has a much more folksy, Old West vibe in its music, which, since it only has this theme after Partitio frees it from poverty in chapter 1 of his story, says heaps about his effect on the world around him, bringing life and joy back into it. Then there are the battle themes. While almost all of them are used for multiple fights in the game, what is unique is the lead-in. As for each story, you will get a unique prelude before the boss theme kicks in, based on whose story it is a part of, giving them yet another chance to shine and giving reused themes a unique vibe. Just listen to how the same elements of Tressa's theme are transformed into a serious lead-in to a powerful boss theme. All the elements that are unique to Tressa are there, yet used in a different context to make a clear statement. This isn't just any boss fight, this is Tressa's boss fight, and whatever the stakes are, they're going to have major consequences for her journey. This is what elevates a game's soundtrack from something catchy and memorable into a true work of art. There are so many of my favourite series that you can't talk about without mentioning how meaningful the soundtracks are. Octopath has been my prime example here, but you could also examine games like Persona, Xenoblade, and even Sonic the Hedgehog in this way, because these are all series that make music as central a game design feature as the levels or combat mechanics. By using music to zero in on your central characters, you lay the groundwork for truly incredible stories, because being able to connect with a personality through music requires the deepest possible understanding of exactly who they are, where they came from, and what they seek to accomplish. And once you have that groundwork established, you can use it in a multitude of ways throughout the game to constantly bring the audience back to those ideas in subtle yet powerful ways. That's what makes Octopath so special, and that's what elevates a good character theme above any other piece of music on a game soundtrack. When I listen to a good battle theme, I'm amped up and ready to go. When I listen to a good location theme, I'm transported to that place. When I listen to a good character theme, it's like they're standing right there in front of me.